The Electric State, Netflix's astoundingly expensive new movie starring Millie Bobby Brown and Chris Pratt, managed to take a very interesting concept and ruin it. Though it technically has all of the parts that should, at the very least, make for a watchable big-budget flick, star power, good visual effects, etc., nothing about this movie seems to work. And in that, it's ended up becoming the exact thing it was meant to skewer. So what all went wrong with The Electric State? And what's up with that ending? Let's take a closer look. Based on the 2018 graphic novel of the same name by Simon Stolenhag, though we'll talk about the number of ways it differs in just a sec. The Electric State follows teenager Michelle through an alternate timeline 90s, where she's surviving in a dystopian world that's come to pass after a human-robot war. The robots had become sentient, and no longer wanted to be forced into servitude to the humans, and so attempted to revolt.
For years, they never complained about working around the clock. But the day eventually came when they grew tired of the lives we assigned them.
Their rebellion was crushed, and the robots that were left had to take a peace treaty that saw them being forced into an exclusion zone away from the humans. The humans, on the other hand, became trapped by a different issue. Evil tech overlord Ethan Skate has gotten humanity hooked on VR, living their lives out in fake worlds to the point that many have essentially lost their connection with their regular human selves. Michelle, who we quickly come to find is not like the other teens. She has no interest in the technological world.
Sorry, I have a condition where I can only live in reality.
Is also having to deal with the trauma from her past. Her parents and her brother died in a car crash, leaving her as a lonely orphan. Or so she thought. It turns out that her brother is possibly still alive. Kind of. She sets out on an adventure that would be dangerous if this film had any real stakes or tension. It does not. To try to save her brother and also possibly what's left of the world. Older sister has to save younger brother from some evil third party is a trope that shows up pretty regularly in cinema, and usually serves as a way to explore the harsher sides of the in-between stages of growing up as an eldest daughter. Trying to figure out your own life as you hurtle towards adulthood, feeling responsible for caring for your younger siblings, and responsible for anything bad that might happen to them, and the many tensions that can arise attempting to walk these two paths. The Electric State doesn't really seem interested in exploring that to any real degree, though. Michelle is definitely sad about her brother in some vague way, and realizing he might still be alive is what sets her off on her quest, but there's an emptiness there that the story never manages to overcome. One big change from the original story is that Michelle has essentially been bumped from main character to sidekick for Keith, who is essentially a very bored Pratt phoning in bad quips and Party City legally distinct space movie smuggler cosplay. They also chose to add in that evil tech guy Skate to work in what seemed to be the film's real goal, which was to totally obliterate the actual point of the original story. The Electric State essentially is the thing the original work was commenting on. While the graphic novel worked to explore the lasting effects of a world consumed by hyper-consumerism and the dystopic, disconnected wasteland that lay in its wake, the Electric State is that empty, disconnected, hyper-consumerist dystopia it's pretending to be against. For a movie that's supposedly about how bad it is that humans have essentially let themselves be replaced by machines, they've created a bunch of characters that themselves feel inhuman and robotic, within a world that's just as glassy and hollow as the VR world they're supposed to be trying to escape. Much of this is likely in large part due to the fact that the Russo brothers, who directed the film, don't actually think that that future is so bad. They've been very open about how they're all in on AI replacing essentially everything human and creative about filmmaking. To partner with creative visionaries to develop the next generation of filmmaking technology. The film and graphic novel also diverge in their creation as well. The graphic novel was funded via Kickstarter, by an audience of people who wanted to support a real artist and were excited to see what he created. The movie was thrown together slop made by people who don't seem to care and for no one in particular. Coming in with a price tag of over $300 million, and that's not including promo costs. The Electric State is apparently one of the most expensive movies ever made. Overpaying for spectacle is nothing new for Hollywood. But this isn't even a spectacle. It's hollow and boring, and aside from the robots themselves, not even nice to look at. Adam Naiman wrote in his review for The Ringer, "What's extraordinary about the Electric State is the inverse relationship between the richness and complexity of its special effects design, the genuinely uncanny way its non-human characters seem to occupy real space alongside their flesh and blood co-stars, and the evasiveness and banality of the storytelling. Oftentimes, when something that's panned for being terrible drops, there's a chorus of, well, not everything has to be deep, nothing actually matters. Why are you trying to think about things? Just have fun." But this movie also manages to totally miss the mark on even schlocky humor, so even those people will likely be bored by it at best. This film is just a very expensive, shiny shell papering over a story that's been entirely hollowed out in order to appease the corporate overlords who decided to bring it into being in the first place. Netflix has been willing to poke fun at itself in the past, but only in a way that, at the end of the day, made sure to hit home that they do hold all of the cards and have us all trapped. But as their hold has become less and less sure, they've seemed to become more and more interested in turning away from any real conversations in favor of creating an endless stream of whatever, just to keep people stuck to their screens. That sounds familiar. Because the megacorp that spent over $300 million on it doesn't actually want to deal with what the story is about, the story just kind of ends up being about nothing. And that's how we ended up with that ending. Michelle eventually does find her brother, coming to realize that his brain is being used to power Skate's neural network VR and the evil robots. And he is alive, kind of. But unfortunately, he's become so connected to the machine that he knows he won't be able to survive without it. But he realizes that it also won't be able to survive without him. And so, in the end, Michelle agrees to let him go to save what's left of the world. And the evil is defeated. The graphic novel's ending is rather ambiguous, because it, like the entire book, is meant to provoke deeper thought. The film, on the other hand, is very on the nose with its ending. They specifically added the evil tech guy so that they could have a single source of everything that was wrong. Take him out and ta-da, everyone's free. And no one has to think about how we got here as a society or why. At the end, Michelle gives a pseudo-sentimental monologue about how everyone should leave the VR world behind and go make connections in the real world. Which, yeah, for sure. But the movie itself doesn't even seem to really believe that. Netflix essentially is, or wants to be, the Neurocaster. It has the same goal of keeping people locked in with an endless stream of slop. And so the moral of the story must be changed so that that isn't the real issue. As far as the film is concerned, being trapped in a glaze of nostalgia based solely on IP and continually mainlining slop is just fine, as long as it's under the watchful eye of a good corporation and not the bad guy. The film tries to be a phone bad story, but also isn't even willing to actually dig into the way that technology and our use of and connection with it absolutely can and does cause problems both small and large. It could have been an opportunity to explore so many of the real-world issues that we're having to contend with. Rise of AI, corporate hegemony, addictions to social media and the virtual world, the fear of losing genuine human connection. But instead, it chooses to sidestep any actually interesting or possibly deep conversation or insight. But the problems don't start or end with the Electric State. The film is in many ways a perfect example of so many things that are going wrong with the film industry in our current moment. Money-hungry studios desperately grasping for eyes by trying to convince people they're saying something or have a point of view, but being too afraid to actually do anything barrier-breaking or interesting. And so instead, just throwing a bunch of money at the problem and hoping that they can make the outcome sound good enough to investors, the studio's real target audience, to juice the numbers for the next quarter. Studios don't want to pay the creatives actually making movies, but are willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on one terribly made property that no one even ends up enjoying. Netflix doesn't have to share their numbers. And when they do, they're able to finagle them to say whatever they want. If they want this to be a major booming success that shows the haters, the numbers will magically say that. If they want it to be a big money pit flop so they could write it off, then it will be so. The electric state is also a perfect example of something that has been a problem across platforms, but that Netflix in particular has been called out for pushing: second screen viewing, aka making movies and shows for people to just have on in the background while they watch things they're actually interested in on their phones. Will Tavlin wrote in his piece Casual Viewing for N+1 magazine, "Such slipshod filmmaking works for the streaming model since audiences at home are often barely paying attention. Several screenwriters who worked for the streamer told me a common note from company executives is, have this character announce what they're doing so that viewers who have this program on in the background can follow along." And actress Justine Bateman told The Hollywood Reporter, "I've heard from showrunners who were given notes from the streamers that this isn't second screen enough, meaning the viewer's primary screen is their phone and the laptop, and they don't want anything on your show to distract them from their primary screen, because if they get distracted, they might look up, be confused, and go turn it off." And you can really feel this in the electric state. The writing is empty, just barely doing enough work to get everything from point A to point B. Just enough to create some background noise, but not enough to actually engage anyone. While the electric state adaptation might have been a letdown, you can always read the great graphic novel. And if you're looking for something else to watch instead, you can check out Tales from the Loop, which is based on another of Stolen Hog's novels. It manages to bring this eerie robot-laden world to life, while still keeping the mystery and ambiance, and meaning, intact. And for films, try Blade Runner and its sequel, Children of Men: A Scanner Darkly, or Bong Joon-ho's new film, Mickey 17. While the electric state isn't all bad, the robots do look quite nice, and it's clear that the visual effects team really put in a lot of work to make them look and feel integrated into the world. It fails far more than it succeeds. It's an unfortunate waste of such a great concept, as well as a lot of money and time. Its flopping could be a sign to Netflix and the other streamers to begin moving away from this bloated, overpriced, and underbaked second screen silo, and to start heading back towards putting their money and their weight behind good films. But it doesn't look like they're planning on unplugging from this dystopia anytime soon.
That's The Take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.